Hello everyone, I am Rajeshri Moganty, Professor at the Department of Biochemistry, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. The module we are going to do today is module 31 on aqueous solutions, acids, bases, Anderson-Hasselbalch equation, buffers and so on and so forth. And this module comes under paper 1, the foundations of biophysics. So, this module what are we going to discuss is mainly on the aqueous solutions. In the previous module you studied the chemical properties, physical properties of water, but here water is the medium, but you will have so many solutions containing number of molecule, number of other solutes. So, it is important to know how the aqueous solutions behave. So, based on this the objectives are laid out are you should be able to know how to express the concentration of a solution in different units and describe the properties of solutions, then distinguish between the acids, bases, solutions, and then also what are the equations that are the rules that they follow, and mainly the application of the Anderson-Hasselbalch equation, which is the most fundamental to determine the pKs and pHs of solutions. Then also explain the functions of buffer, the buffer capacity and so on and so forth. What are the normal buffers that are routinely used in the laboratories and research. Then finally, to understand the titration curves and pK values. So, these are the basics of aqueous solutions. So, when we talk about simple terms, nevertheless it needs a mention in the beginning, because this whole paper is on foundations. So, it is important for you to sort of revise those fundamentals. Therefore, I will start with what is understood by a solution. A solution is in chemistry, I mean not a problem and solution in general English terminology, but when a solution in terms of chemistry, it is a homogeneous mixture of two, or it could be more than two chemically non-interacting substances whose composition can vary, I mean within certain limits. So, both the two components should not chemically react, otherwise there will be a chemical reaction. So, in a solution the two components are non-interacting, but the concentrations of each one can be different. So, it is a homogeneous mixture of all the particles are of molecular size, that is up to 10 to the power minus 9 meters or a nanometer this size, because otherwise what will happen, they can lead to coagulation and so on, precipitation. So, in a normal solution it is the particle size is less than or about 1 nanometer, and also every solution is made up of a solvent and a solute. So, when what is a solvent? Solvent is mainly the larger component in a solution, and which is present in large amount by weight compared to the other component, which we call it as a solute. So, you have a solute and a solvent, and what is a solute? It is obviously in a solution lesser amount or the minimum concentration component with that. So, if we define it, you can call it as it is the component of the solution which is present in smaller amounts by weight as compared to that of the other, that is a solvent. Okay, after giving these two terms, now when we talk about an aqueous solution, the term aqueous solution is only used for where the solvent is water. So, solution can be any alcohol, in a normal term the solvent can be alcohol or any other medium which can not necessarily be water, but the term aqueous solution is particularly given to only when there is a medium or the solvent is water. And of course, it needs a different kind of understanding and properties. Therefore, all the other substances other than the water, we call it a solute. Since water is a ionic, rather is a polar solvent, the solutes are normally ionic. It could be a strong ion or a weak ion components, and these aqueous acids, bases, molecular compounds, all these compounds can be called as solutes in a water in the aqueous solution. So, the aqueous solution can be very dilute, or it could be medium dilute, or it could be strong, like I have shown you in the picture that the extreme this thing is dilute, the central one is not so dilute, but then again you have a concentrated solution or a strong solution. So, the water structure is given, therefore, any water, because water in aqueous solutions, the water is a solvent, any solute will interact by forming a polar water molecule interactions, that could be charge-charge interactions, or it could be hydrophilic interactions, or hydrogen bonding, and so on and so forth. For example, you have a sodium chloride salt, it will, sodium will interact, and as well as Na plus as well as Cl minus interact in a solution. How to express the concentration of a solution? And a large number of students usually commit a lot of mistakes in understanding the molarity, molality, normality, although they are supposed to be very commonly used terms. When it comes to kind of describing them or understanding them, it's not very clear. Therefore, I introduce them here, all the terms. Now, some of the important terms is that how to express. You can express it in number of ways, but a number of ways that can be used in a different units also. So, some of the important terms is a molecular weight, that is whenever you have a concentration, that means obviously how much amount is there. So, it can be concentration presented in grams, but in true terms it has to be expressed in Daltons, not grams. And also mole, that is amount of the substance that has a mass in grams, numerically equivalent to that of a molecular weight. Then also, of course, Avogadro number, which was introduced to you earlier, that 1 mole of the substance has the number of molecules of as a mole of any other substance, that is 6 into 10 to the power 23, that is Avogadro number. Now, let us come to different units that we express. One of the terms which is not so common in terms of the biological systems, but nevertheless one unit that is commonly known is the ppm or ppb, that is a parts per million, parts per billion. The concentration of the solution is amount of the solute dissolved in a known amount of the solvent or a solution. ppm is defined as the mass of the solute present in 1 million, that is 10 to the power 6 parts of the solution. Therefore, if your solute is A is ppm A, that means its mass is present in 10 to the power 6 mass of the solution and not solvent. Please remember, when we talk about the total one is the mass of the solution. Similarly, you can express it in by weight also. So, some of the biologists like to express in percentage weight, which is not very nice, but in some cases it is routinely used by, for example, microbiology and so on. So, the weight of the solution solute present in 100 grams of the solution, again it is a solution, not the solvent. Now, percentage by volume also can be expressed, that is percentage by volume means it means the weight of the solute in grams dissolved in 100 cc of the solution. So, this is the volume and that is by the weight, because when you you have to determine the concentrations or make solutions, for example, H2SO4, you have to take it from their density, you have to determine from their concentration. Concentrated solution may be present in grams per percentage wise, then you have to use that to convert it into your own requirement. And in case of this solid dissolved in a liquid is usually taken, and but if you take it in case of a liquid to liquid, that means concentration of the one liquid which is present in another, then it is called the percentage by volume. That means both are present in volume. Earlier it is solute in liquid, so it is grams by solution, and here it is actually both will be in volume by volume you expect. Therefore, you can just calculate it. For example, ppm, it is present, I showed it to you, milligram per liter, or it could be ppb means microgram per liter. These are the two units, and mass of a volume unit, mass and volume of the unit should match. If you are present expressing the mass in grams, then the volume should be in milliliters. If you express the volume in liters, then the mass should be in kilograms. So, you do not mix up these two units, that is very important. So, the parts per million and parts per billion, parts per trillion also can be expressed. So, milligram per liter will become ppm and microgram per liter will become ppb and nanogram per liter will be ppt. So the next, this is one of the example I asked you to make. What you can do is to look at this problem and then calculate it and come back and check. You can pause the video, come back and see whether you have done the correction, the calculation correctly with the given answer in front of you. So the next is a percentage. Okay, the biology is also, as I told, that percentage by weight, which I have already expressed, percentage volume, then percentage by volume. Now we come to the molarity, which is one of the most common ones. So you should be able to do this in simple terms. Simple, the solutes like sodium chloride, these molecular weights also should be in at the tip of your tongue. Now what is molarity is defined as a number of moles of the solute dissolved per liter of the solution. Always it is solution unless it is specified. Most of the time it is the total volume of the solution. So it is represented by capital M, molar, and is given by the number of moles of solute per volume of the solution present in liters. Example I have given sodium chloride, you can calculate yourself. The next one is the molality. Now a lot of you get confused with these two terms. This molality is defined as a number of moles of solute present per kilogram of solvent, not solution. So please remember, this is the only difference here, the expressed per total volume, total weight of the solvent. So the molality you can say as moles of solute per kilogram of the solvent. Now this is a different, that molarity is a measurement of the moles in total volume of the solution, whereas molality is measurement of the moles of the relation to the mass of the solvent. Now examples also I have given here, that you can calculate of the same this thing, that is CCl4, you can calculate both molar and molar. Now normality has may not be so common, but has its own advantages in expressing some of the acids where you have the equivalent weight is taken. Now normality is defined as a number of gram equivalents. Remember, it is a gram equivalence of the solute. So therefore you can denote it by capital N, and the number of gram equivalents of the solute per the volume of the solution in 1 liter. So this is given by N, molarity, into, if you want to calculate normality, molarity into equivalent will be N. That is the relation. And for example, if you take H2SO4, because 2 moles of hydrogen ions are released by H2SO4, it will become N equal to, it will become the gram equivalent will be 2. So the mole fraction one, it's important when you are doing in a kind of mole fraction, it has its own advantages, especially when you are doing in mixtures and you want to express it in terms of the fraction, but in moles, how they are related to each other. And you will be using this in DNA experiments and also in absorption experiments a lot, that mole fraction has its own advantages. Now what is as a name suggests, that it is a constituent of the fraction obtained by dividing the number of the constituents, whether it is say for example n, by the total number of the equivalent constituent, that is n1 plus n2 and plus 3. So mole fraction need not be a mixture of two components, but it can have a number of components x, y, z and so on, therefore, or xa, xb and so on. So if you have two components, simple binary mixture a plus b, then you have xa equal to a by moles of a by total, that is a plus b, or b, if you take xb will be b moles of b by the total. So when you actually combine mole fraction xa plus xb, it has to be 1. So this is useful when you are talking about a experiments like DNA drug interaction, when where you want to keep both moles 1:1, then you have to have equal fraction. So there you use, or if you want one drug molecule is binding to say 6 molecules or binding to 1 molecule of DNA, then you need to maintain the constant the ratio of mole fraction 6:1. So there you use this more frequently. So depending on the need and necessity, the units of concentrations differ. So this is actually giving a table where I have given all the units and definitions summarizing both molarity, ppm, ppb, normality, mole fraction. Again, mole fraction I have given some examples, you can do yourself. As I told you, you can pause the video, come back and check your answer. Now we are talking about aqueous solutions, and aqueous solutions and buffers actually go synonymous. When you want to make a buffer, you want to know what is pH and pK and so on and so forth. So the term acids and bases come in picture. Acid is of course can be easily termed as which gives hydrogen and hydrogen ions when dissolved in water, and the substance that reduces the hydrogen ion concentration in a solution, we call it as a base, because hydrogen and HOH, or you can even say that which gives out the hydroxyl ions. So a strong acid, when you talk about it, could be a weak acid or a strong acid. A strong acid is a thing that actually completely dissociates in water. Whenever, like hydrochloride, when you HCl, when you put it in water, when you add in water, it actually completely dissociates into hydrogen and chloride. But whereas a weak acid actually partially dissociates, there is an equilibrium generated between the dissociated and undissociated form. So the acid can be weak or strong. Similarly, base can be a strong or a weak. Therefore, you need to introduce the term when we have a how much it is dissociation. Then how do you express the strength of an acid? Then it comes the term synonymous is the pH scale. Now pH is generally defined as a negative logarithm of hydrogen ion concentration. So when you take water, actually it dissociates into H plus OH minus. So the pH can be minus logarithm of H plus to the base 10, and if you want to add, if you have to add the 2.303 into as a base of the, if you are converting it from the logarithmic scale of E exponential. So the most of the biological fluids actually are in the pH range of 6 to 8, not very far. Of course, in a stomach you have an acidic, and then in a saliva you have a basic condition. So this scale actually tells you about the different regions of the pHs which are associated with the biological fluids. Now a small change in pH actually indicates a substantial change in hydrogen ion concentration and hydroxyl concentration. So the pH is an indicative because it's a logarithmic scale. It tells you how much change in the concentration. So you should be able to know that if the pH is given, you should be able to know how much is this hydrogen ion concentration, and so the reverse, hydrogen ion concentration is known. So you should be able to know the pH. Now the pH and buffers. Now what is a buffer? A buffer is that which actually eliminates a large sudden changes in pH, or which is resistant to a change in pH. So when you want to do any experiment under a constant pH or a certain hydrogen ion concentration, you don't want to, there may be reaction going on with various interacting molecules, then you do not want the buffer to change, the pH to change of the medium you are working on, your experiment you are doing in enzyme kinetics. You don't want the buffer because the enzyme function will change as the pH changes. So you want a condition where the pH is more or less maintained. So that is what the buffer does. A buffer helps the organism also maintains the pH of the body fluids within a narrow certain range. It does not mean that it takes care of a large range, a certain, to some extent, within the narrow range, a buffer actually maintains the. How does it maintain? It actually resists because it has its own, it can sort of act as a sink to either to hydrogen ions or hydroxyl ions, and therefore it maintains the pH at a given adjusted pH, whatever it was. So each buffer has its own actually range of buffer pH where it can maintain, can be used. So a combination of hydrogen ions, acceptors and donors actually forms a solution of weak acid or a weak base. So by accepting the hydrogen ion from the solution when they are in excess and diluting the hydrogen ion when they have to be displaced. So this is what actually buffer does. I mean, the term itself explains so well that it takes care of the, it actually sink, or it will give it if it is required in a small range, that has to be remembered. So then comes the how do you say which is a good buffer or a bad buffer, or it can be, that comes the term called buffer capacity. Now the capacity means it tells that how efficient it is to maintain, you want to maintain at 7 pH, how efficiently this buffer is working, which buffer you have to choose, under what conditions, whether it serves your needs or not. So the buffer capacity is actually a measure of the efficiency of a buffer in resisting the changes in the pH, because sometimes the reaction you are doing, there may be release of hydrogen ions or there may be release of hydroxyl ions, which actually can change the pH. So the buffer is should be able to take care of these conditions. So conventionally what is happening is, a buffer capacity which is expressed in beta is expressed as amount of the strong acid or base in gram equivalents that must be added to 1 liter of the solution, so as to change the pH to its by 1 unit. So that is what is the definition by buffer capacity. Then you have a number of buffers which are actually normally used in biological systems. I am only talking about the biological systems. Suppose you need to use say for example acidic condition 1 to 2, then you choose HCl and potassium chloride as a buffer, or you want to use 2 to 3 or 2 to 4, then the glycine is the best buffer, glycine HCl buffer, because glycine has a pH, a pK of about 7, and therefore it takes care of your pH range of 2 to 4. Now you want to change it to a higher one, slightly acidic, but you need to change from 3 to 6, then you better use a citrate buffer or citrate phosphate buffer if you really want to use from a large range of 2 to 7 or a 3 to 7. Now when it comes to the slightly basic side, phosphate buffer is the ideal one, where you can take, it can work very well from 6 to 8. Not exactly 6 to 7, but it can go up to 8 also. So phosphate buffer also has some advantages because it does not interact with so many other in biological situations it is better to use phosphate buffer. Again tris HCl buffer is also good, but tris gives sometimes problems. It can interfere with some of the spectroscopic methods, experiments, but tris HCl can be used if you are not using any biospectroscopy. The range again can be phosphate and tris 7 to 9, 7 to 10, they are very good. Then glycine sodium hydroxide buffer, that is again in the basic one, or you can use a carbonium bicarbonate buffer 9 to 10 if you are in the higher side of the basic range. So these are the commonly used buffer, and the reason they choose is because of their buffer capacity and the range the buffer they work on. So then after knowing the pH, there is a terms you need to know about the pK and so on. pK is ionization constant. When you come across of the amino acids or any other as I just mentioned about glycine. So Henderson-Hasselbalch equation is the the most fundamental equation which you use, rather you do not even realize that you are using that equation, but you still determine the pKs of the acids, bases, amino acids routinely. Now what does it describe? What is Henderson-Hasselbalch equation? This describes the derivation of this pH as a measure of the acidity in biological systems. So the equation actually tells you the useful for estimating the pH of a buffer, and it is widely used to calculate isoelectric point, that is Pi. What is a Pi? Pi is an isoelectric point at which the charge on the this thing is 0, whether it can have a charge, it can have both the charges positive and negative, at the same time it can have a net charge will be 0, that is the one. Do not think that there is no charge. At Pi the molecule will have a charge, but the net charge is 0, it will have some positive negative, but the net charge is 0. That has to be remembered very well. So the Henderson-Basel equation I have shown, for example, you can do for acidic or a basic. For example, Ha, any acid in water, it gives a hydronium ion and A minus, and therefore the pH can be calculated as pKa, that is the acid ionization pK is the ionization, K is ionization constant and pK plus log A minus by HA. So, this is the Henderson equation. Similarly, you can write for a base also, B plus H2O gives BH plus and OH minus, therefore, POH, that is the hydroxyl ion concentration, pK plus log BH minus plus by H. So, the base BH plus by B, that is the base, unionized base. So, ionized by the unionized form. So, this is the way you use the Henderson-Hasselbalch equation for determining the PI. For example, I have shown you here how to determine the buffer of a solution made from 0.2 molar acetic acid and 0.5 molar. It has two dissociation constants. Therefore, you can determine the total pH of this mixture of these acids. This you can do yourself. See, then comes the titration of acids. I am not going into the classical HCl H2S4 which you have studied earlier, but I will try to bring this to you to introduce you to amino acids, which again you will be doing in much more in detail in paper 4 on biomolecules. Now, the amino acids are also known as Zwitter ions. Zwitter ion means it has a dipolar, two ions are there, two charges are there, both it can have positive and negative at the same time. So, the molecular which contains equal number of ionizable groups which can ionize or of opposite charges. So, therefore, they will have both charges positive and negative, but the net charge becomes 0. So, the Zwitter ion, like example is the best example is the glycine molecule. So, what I have shown you here is ionization of the glycine and the amino acids which with net charge, which we call it as a ampholyte, because two charges are there. So, the glycine has NH3 plus and a carboxyl group. So, it can ionize it into three forms. In the extreme acidic pH, extreme acidic conditions, it will exist as NH3 plus because the carboxyl is carboxylated and it is not ionized. So, it will have a total charge of plus NH3 plus in COH on the left hand you see. But when you bring it to the acidic, the neutral pH in the center, then the amino group will be ionized NH3 plus and the carboxyl will also be ionized COO minus. So, the Zwitter ion will be having a net charge of 0. But if we increase the pH into a basic side, what will happen? The NH3 will dissociate into NH2 unionized group and COO again of course will remain a COO minus. So, you do have a COO minus extremely negative charge on the higher or the basic condition. In acidic conditions, you have a positively charged group, positively charged amino acid, whereas in the center, that is at Pi, that is the ionization constant. At Pi is that pH at which the net charge is 0. For example, glycine positive and negative both are there, but the net charge is 0 and that is what makes. So, the isoelectric point is that pH at which there is no net charge of the amino acid and therefore, it does not move in any electric. So, the PI of amino acid has been explained. What I would like to mention here is glycine is a simple amino acid, there is no problem, you have only 2 of them. But if it depends on the group, if the amino acid has an additional chargeable group on the side chain, that is R, then you will have another charge. So, for example, if you take the net charge on the amino acid is algebraic sum of the positively and negatively charged groups present, and it depends upon the pK of the each of the functional group, that is surrounding the medium. So, for example, if you say polyfunctional group, it is slightly different. For example, you take the glutamic acid, this means that if you take pK1, that is the acidic group, alpha carbox, the side chain group, and then you have pK2 and then pK3. In such a case, it is actually pK1 plus pK2 by 2, not the total one, pK1 plus pK2 plus pK3, it is not the average of that. Similarly, in lysine, if you take, it is actually the 2 amino groups that contribute. So, the Pi will be a pK2 and average of pK2 and pK3 and not the average of pK1 and pK2 and pK3. Please remember that if it is a basic group, it is a two basic group that are contributing to the pi, whereas in a acidic group, additional group, it is the pK1 and pK2 that contribute or decide the pi of that particular amino acid. So, this is the titration curve of say histidine is shown. Histidine is also known as a buffer, good buffer for the buffer, acts as a contributing amino acid for showing the properties of buffer of a protein. That is because it has a pi of around in the range of say in the neutral range. So, this titration curve tells you the first one pK, the acidic carboxyl ionizing at 1.8, then you have the neutral one, that is the at about 6, and then of course you have the third one, which is the amino group that is dissociating at 9. So, you see a titration of an amino acid depending on the R or the side group. If it is ionizable, then you will have 3 phase, or either if it is non-ionizable group, then you will have only 2 phases. So, with that I would like to summarize the module. What we have learnt is about the solution, and then it determine the concentration, expression of concentration, different unit depending on the need and depending on the experimental conditions you are using. Then you also have determined how to use the pi and pK as in application of the Anderson-Hasselbalch equation. I also have explained to you that in the biological systems, for example amino acid, how you can use the Anderson-Hasselbalch equation, and you can determine the estimation of pi or the pH of a buffer. And taking the example of glycine, glutamic acid, aspartic acid, lysine, arginine and histidine, I have clearly shown you that how a pi can be determined depending on the chargeable groups. So, it is widely used to calculate the isoelectric point and potential to which the this can be applied, this method can be applied. Thank you.